Fallout 3 has a lot of different ways in which the player can kill an enemy, but what if you wanted to ignore all of those weapons in favor for what Mother Nature gave you? In today's video, we'll be finding out if you can beat Fallout 3 using only your fists. After choosing my sex, name, and primary stats, I faced off against the infamous Radroach. Usually I would get this over with and begin the challenge outside the vault. This is just the tutorial after all. But for once, I wanted to kill every enemy, including this Radroach, using a single weapon. And if my fists aren't the best chance of making that a reality, then I don't know what is. A BB gun only run, perhaps? I thanked Dad for the BB gun, shot the targets, and learned that I couldn't climb over the locker. Has this always been the case? I could have sworn I've been behind there before. My only legitimate option here was to use VATS, and luckily the Radroach was close enough to attack. That wasn't what I was expecting, and the last time I checked, stomping with a foot is not the same as punching with a fist. I reloaded the save and tried again, but the same thing happened. I think it has something to do with the position of the Radroach. Luckily, I didn't have to find a workaround or disregard the Radroach yet again, because on my third try, I missed. So now I was on the other side of the locker with the Radroach, and the only thing left to do was punch it several times. I also used VATS on Dad to get back on the other side, and everything was swell. Butch got punched many times, and Amata tried to give me a gun, but I sent her away. I already had 2 hand cannons, and I was keen to see how far these things would take me. I actually helped Butch this time, killed every enemy, and hit level 2 just outside the vault, increasing explosives, lockpick, and speech. Also choosing the Black Widow perk for the plus 10% damage against male opponents. Now my plan for the run was to just play through the main quest, actually following the stages and not heading straight for Smith Casey's like I usually would, increasing the unarmed skill as I went, and choosing whatever perks I thought would be useful. Not much of a plan, but it's something. I then headed to Springvale to collect the pugilism illustrated from the mailbox, went to Megaton, killed Mr. Burke, disarmed the bomb, and hit level 3, increasing speech and unarmed, also choosing the Swift Learner perk. I wasn't really worried about leveling up or gaining enough skill points, this was just the only perk that seemed useful out of what was available. With that done, I helped Walter repair the pipes, sold scrap metal, complimented Gob, and in order to learn where Dad went, gave Moriarty the 100 caps I got for disarming the bomb. With Galaxy News Radio marked on the map, I began following the marker, killed my first enemy outside of the vault, a vicious dog that took 9 hits to kill, and 2 of those were critical. Outside the Super Duper Mart, I sucker punched 2 raiders, avoided Brian Wilkes like the plague, and made my way inside the Farragut West Station. Down here I dealt with several mole rats and came to the locked gate, where you typically turn on the gas and use the laser pistol to ignite it, killing the ghouls on the other side. I couldn't do that, so I unlocked the gate with the key from the first aid box and swung like crazy. As you can see, standard ghouls took around 4 hits, while roamers took anything between 10 and 15 depending on critical hits. On their own they wouldn't be a problem, but grouped together they did some serious damage, and it wasn't long until I was retreating for tactical purposes. After healing I finished them off, used the naval cot to recover, and started following the signs to the GNR outpost. It wasn't long until I met my first super mutant. The fight went surprisingly well, but I think it's down to the mutant being alone and using a nail board. The attacks were really weak, probably on par with that of my own, but I was much faster, and as I would come to realize, you could avoid certain attacks by moving out of the way. On the surface I disarmed a frag mine, helped the Brotherhood of Steel with the invading mutants, and here's what you've all been waiting for. Have behemoths always been this big? I didn't let their size stop me. I ran over, hit them a single time in the delicates, and proceeded to have my spine compressed into oblivion. I reloaded, dodged, traded hits, ran away, and the Brotherhood did the rest. Inside the GNR studio, 3Dog mentioned something about a good fight. I thought he was squaring up, so I did what any self-respecting person would do. I waited for them to fall asleep and stole their food. I also agreed to help repair his satellite dish, but only because he'd tell me where Dad went once I had. With that agreement made, I hit level 4, increasing unarmed and choosing the educated perk. Heading out the back, I killed the ghouls and entered into the collapsed tunnel towards the DC Plaza, where the Museum of Technology could be found, along with the much needed dish. Without the Brotherhood of Steel, the super mutants were a much larger threat, especially when they're using anything other than a nail board. After the mutants were dead, I thought about healing but decided to wait and see if I could find a bed or water source instead. But then I came across a raider and didn't want to risk dying, so I healed and took him out with little to no health lost. Sometimes in life you feel cheated. This was one of those times. Even though there was a bed, I couldn't use it because there were other enemies nearby, so I pressed on, dealt with the other raiders, and retraced my steps for a good night's sleep. There was also 2 turrets, but my skill wasn't high enough to hack the terminal, and my arms weren't long enough to attack anyway, so I ran past and didn't stop until reaching the Metro Central. As soon as I entered, the sound of both raiders and ghouls could be heard. As soon as the fighting began, I got involved, taking out what I could, and mopped up the remaining survivor. I didn't heal afterwards, instead pushing on, taking out a couple more ghouls, and then came across a pack of vicious dogs. That was close. So close I could hear my heartbeat, which really only happens when you're close to death. Before healing, I picked a lock and hit level 5, increasing medicine and unarmed, also choosing the comprehension perk, and then I realized the Child at Heart perk requires 4 charisma. I only had 2. This perk is a concrete way of getting inside Little Lamplight. Without it, you can pass a speech check or rescue the children from Paradise Falls. I didn't want to do the latter, which left me with 2 choices. I could pick the intense training perk twice, putting the points into charisma, and then choosing the Child at Heart perk, or sink some skill points into speech and hope it would be enough by the time I got there. I went with the second option. The last section of the metro was easy. I let a ghoul kill a raider, killed the ghoul, took a nap, killed some more raiders, and surfaced outside the Museum of Technology. Inside the museum, I massaged a mutant's face, drank from a toilet. The health to rads ratio was not worth it, and to make things worse, I found a drinking fountain behind the door. Most of the mutants were singular, so they were more of a nuisance than an actual threat. I also used VATS more often, so the damage I received was only 10% of what it should be. Plus, your chances of dealing a critical hit is increased by 15%, so every so often a super mutant would go down a little quicker. With that revelation, I grabbed the Virgo 2 Lunar Lander communications dish, got my head crippled, and dealt with what I think was my first super mutant brute. 2 words: time consuming. On the way out, I quick saved, and 2 seconds later, the game crashed. Reloading and this time leaving the museum, I made my way to the top of the Washington Monument, attached the satellite dish, and returned to 3Dog, who told me to go to Rivet City. Along the way, I killed a centaur and hit level 6, increasing medicine and sneak, and unarmed to 100, also choosing the toughness perk for 10% damage resistance. I tested this new perk out against the nearby brute, and I must admit I did see a difference. With the captive rescued, I decided to try my luck against a Mirelurk. As you can imagine, punching an enemy that's known for its hard carapace wasn't a good idea, but it was doable, one at a time at least. With a trio of Mirelurks hot on my trail, I headed into Duke's place in the hopes of losing them. Instead of that happening, they came inside, and everyone lost their minds. Only Fantasia managed to survive, but she told me off for stealing, so she joined Duke and Cherry, and I got to keep my Nuka-Cola. Outside, the Christmas Raiders weren't a problem, neither were the mutants outside the Jefferson Memorial. The brute with the minigun was easily avoided by getting other mutants to stand in the way. I rescued another captive, took a nap, and spoke to Dr. Lee, who said something about Dad being at Project Purity. Before leaving, I went to the marketplace and bought an advanced radiation suit from Flak. Once again, I wouldn't be using forks to retrieve the GECK, and this way, I didn't have to worry about leveling up lockpick to unlock the room with the rad suit, allowing me to solely focus on increasing speech, which would hopefully get me inside Little Lamplight. At the Purifier, I found the holotape telling me Dad went to Vault 112 beneath Smith Casey's, and I was finally at the point in time where I could have technically begun the challenge, but what's another 2 hours anyway? Before leaving the memorial, I decided to clear the facility of mutants to save me having to do so when we came back. I took another nap and made my way to Smith Casey's, killing a Protectron along the way, which was the easiest enemy so far. All I had to do was strafe side to side to confuse the machine and then stay behind it. At Smith Casey's there was nothing difficult, a simple in and out situation as always, although I did hit level 7 inside the simulation, increasing speech and choosing the Bloody Mess perk, which increases damage with all weapons by 5%. I had, and still have, no idea if this perk affected how much damage my hands dealt, but it was worth a shot. After fast travelling to Rivet City, Dad caught up, convinced the scientists to return to the memorial, and this time they went straight inside to the Purifier. Flood pump mainframe dead Dad's sewers. For those wondering, an Enclave soldier took 13 hits. My faith to get these guys through the sewers alive was thin, to say the least. The ghouls weren't the problem, it's the Enclave soldiers above shooting down. 9 times out of 10, both Alex and Daniel die here. Also, I kind of convinced Dr. Lee to leave Gaza behind for a measly 6 XP, the equivalent of 1.5 ghouls. I hate me too. I wasn't surprised that by the time we surfaced outside the Citadel, there was only myself and Dr. Lee still breathing. The gate lifted and I hit level 8, increasing speech to 78 and choosing the rad resistant perk. Inside the Citadel, I received the usual training and got the location of Vault 87. The journey to Little Lamplight was uneventful, but I did learn that rad scorpions act the same as a Protectron, or at least they can be defeated like one. I also turned into a mutant-seeking missile and entered Lamplight Caverns. This was the moment I was worried about most. My speech skill was 78, which is quite high, but would it be enough? Apparently not. Little did MacCready know about my secret weapon, the ability to load an earlier save and try again. He legitimately let me in on the second try. I guess he knew that no matter what, I was not going to rescue his friends from a lifetime of slavery. MacCready opened the gate to Murder Pass, and I had a not so fun experience with the super mutants, also encountering my first super mutant master just outside the vault door.
There you are! No! Little baby scared? No! Arm hurt! Die! No! No!
With that over, I hit level 9, increasing medicine to 75, and choosing the second rank of the Swift Learner perk. Vault 87 was actually pretty fun. I think dealing with 2 super mutants and 1 super mutant brute at the same time was the highlight of the vault, and instead of using food to heal, I drank from sinks and used whatever beds I could find. I pretended to not hear Forks, donned the advanced radiation suit I bought from Flak, chugged some Rad-X, and retrieved the GECK. One time-traveling flashbang later, I was at Raven Rock becoming best friends with a machine, and I hit level 10, increasing medicine to 98 and choosing the finesse perk for more critical hits. The soldiers were jealous of my new robotic friend and tried to kill me. Luckily, my hands were made of something stronger than something very strong. Eden promised to commit robot seppuku and gave me a party tube full of stuff that definitely wasn't poison. The Tesla soldiers seemed easier this time, but I think that had something to do with the sentry bots that were still alive. Either way, they were dead, and I took their armor. Back up top, the base went boom, and I fast traveled to the Citadel, where Sarah Lyons rallied the troops, Liberty Prime woke up, and I hit level 11, increasing speech to 100 and medicine to 99, also choosing the Here and Now perk, leveling up yet again to level 12, increasing medicine to 100, and everything else to the nearest 5 or 10 for that visual satisfaction. Also choosing the Life Giver perk for 30 more hit points. For some reason, I wanted to try and beat Liberty Prime across the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It really didn't go well. After swimming to shore, I healed my limbs, jumped out, and followed the path beneath the bridge to meet back up with the Brotherhood. Well, it was just Liberty Prime. The other members seemed to have disappeared ever since I went swimming, and they never showed up again, all bar Blondie anyway. Liberty Prime turned into a walking meat grinder, Sarah Lyons came out of the shadows, and together we breached the rotunda. Autumn fell, I fist bumped Sarah goodbye, activated the purifier, and the run was officially complete. So to answer the question, can you beat Fallout 3 using only your fists? Yes, you can. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.